Foreigners are being forced out of Poland, and it's worse than you think. There's a lot of complexity around this issue, so I'm gonna do my best to address it. So if you're a foreigner living here in Poland, you might be forced to leave. And that's because, if you guys didn't know, Poland had a bilateral agreement with specific countries that allowed people to come into the country for 90 days at a time, leave the Schengen area, and come back into Poland directly for a new 90 days. People were able to repeat this without limit. This is how a lot of Americans have stayed here, and how I was able to stay here in my initial stay in Poland before I applied for my residency. At the moment, it's not like Poland is actively kicking out foreigners just because they hate foreigners, but there are a lot of changes in the laws right now that people need to know. So this bilateral agreement has been in place, I believe, since the 90s, and I know personally some Americans who have been here for 10 years, 13 years, taking advantage of the system. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are saying. I thought that there was a Schengen rule where you can only be in Schengen for 90 days out of 180 days. That is true, but Poland and specific other countries, I believe Denmark has this, I think maybe Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, Hungary as well. They all have different versions of this bilateral agreement. But in most other Schengen countries, the Schengen rule does apply. So the secret to taking advantage of this bilateral agreement, you were able to come into Poland, and if you were within that 90-day limit within the Schengen visa, so 90 days within 180 days, you were able to travel to all different parts of Europe and all the different Schengen areas. But once you pass those 90 days, you are technically considered illegal. However, if you took advantage of this bilateral agreement with Poland, you're able to remain legal in Poland. However, you wouldn't be legal in all the Schengen areas. So you were only able to really stay in this country. And I've had friends who were illegal in Schengen, even though they were legal in Poland because of the bilateral agreement. They crossed the border over to Germany, and Germany is very strict with checking passports and your residency. They were checked at the border, and then because they saw that they were illegal, they ended up getting blacklisted for a year. So Germany doesn't play with that. But this has been one of the big secrets that a lot of people have been taking advantage of for years. But it's not just with Americans. Americans, Argentinians, Mexicans, Chileans, Israelis, Japanese, and Koreans also had a similar agreement. So this was one of the biggest draws of Poland initially for me, because I was able to stay and live in Europe without having to get a real visa. They've been talking about removing this bilateral agreement for a couple of years now, so I already saw the writing on the wall. So that's why in the beginning of this year, in January, that's when I finally decided to apply for residency. So what changed? Europe recently introduced this entry-exit system, which electronically tracks all the people coming in and out of Schengen. Now, because the system is being shared with all the European countries, we are no longer able to take advantage of this bilateral agreement. I don't know if the bilateral agreements have been canceled. This is what we've received information-wise from the Immigration Office. Official statement of the Border Management Board of the Border Guard headquarters at the Ministry of Internal Affairs. In response to the correspondence concerning the condition of stay of U.S. citizens in Poland/Schengen territory after the introduction of the entry-exit system. So they list a couple of these regulations, and these regulations amend the rules for extending short-term stays of foreigners in the territory of the Republic of Poland. So from the date of the launch of the system, which is October 12th, a couple of weeks ago, an extension of the stay after the authorized period has been exhausted. Rules and regulations have been amended since the launch of the EES system, and it can be extended, but it's only possible under the bilateral agreement with the waiver of such visa requirements. However, it should be noted that the agreement in the form of an exchange of notes between the government of Poland and the US on the abolition of visas for US citizens, dated since 1991, unfortunately does not regulate the possibility of extending the authorized stay. Therefore, in accordance with EU law, the definition of the permitted duration of short-term stays in member states will also apply to US citizens, meaning that such stays will no longer exceed 90 days in any 180-day period. And this has been confirmed by a lot of people that I know. So what does this mean? If you are from one of these countries and you have not applied for your residency yet, you need to get on that ASAP. The system is already backed up in a lot of ways. I applied in January, and the process has been extended because I moved from Krakow to Warsaw. If I just stayed in Krakow, I think I would have gotten everything done within 10 months. But because I moved to Warsaw and they had to transfer my application from Krakow to Warsaw and I had to wait for my fingerprints all over again, it took an extra 6 months for me to get my fingerprints appointment. So that was last week, and they say that usually it takes about 4 to 6 months from the fingerprints in order to get my residency. But sometimes it can take as little as 2 to 3 months. Sometimes you can get it sooner. It's all variable. So if you are somebody who is thinking about moving to Poland, or you are here in Poland already and you're trying to figure out what is the best option for you in terms of long-term residency, thankfully there are a lot of really good options that are easier to apply for than you might think. So if you guys are interested in moving to Poland or obtaining residency here, finding an apartment, all that stuff, set up a consultation with me here so we can talk about your needs and I can tell you the ways for you to get residency. There's a lot of ways that you can get it that are a little obscure if you don't know who to talk to, so I have the right contacts. I can help you with that process. If you guys are looking to apply for it yourself, or you're wondering what services are out there that can help with the immigration process, I highly recommend this app, Carta Pobytu. They are one of my partners. They have different services. I really like their approach to getting a TRC because they have different options and plans depending on what you want. They have a service where they can just check all the documents for you to make sure everything is good. They also have a VIP plan where you don't have to touch or print any documents. They handle everything for you. They also have an app which allows you to monitor the status of your application process, which I find very innovative because it removes a lot of the doubt when it comes to applying for the process. Bureaucracy here in Poland and just in general can be really annoying, but I highly recommend working with a professional because a lot of people can make mistakes, and Polish is such a difficult language that they'll reject you for just the tiniest mistakes. So for me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do it yourself. I always recommend working with a professional. Also, if you use code weslythomasmusic at checkout, you get 5% off your order. One of the easy ways that you can get around this whole entire Schengen thing in general is if you have a Schengen passport. And a lot of people think that you can only get it if your parents came from a European country or through investment, but there are actually a lot of ways to obtain second citizenship. Thankfully, my friend at the Wealthy Expat, Rafael, this is all he does. This is all he talks about. He has helped hundreds of people from all over the world obtain second citizenships. If you guys are interested in obtaining second citizenships, I will also put a link to his information where you can schedule a call with him, or you can just check out his channel, The Wealthy Expat. Poland is receiving a lot of hype because of its very strong anti-illegal immigration stance. Something that I do like about this country is that they're pretty good when it comes to following the rules. And sure, there's corruption in any country, things seem to be pretty correct here. So if you do want to move to Poland, I still highly recommend it because I still think Warsaw is the best city in Europe right now when it comes to safety, cost of living, networking, pretty much everything that you want. Coming here to stay legally can be a little complicated. So that's why I'm here to help, and I can help you guys through the whole entire process. I'll continue to update you guys if there are any news about it, but this seems to be how the situation is now. It is what it is. It's just a sign of the changing times, and we have to adjust.